Hey lawyers, thanks for joining me today. I'm Andrea Lyon. I work with Social Firestarter. This video is going to be about how you can stick out and why your firm needs to stick out if you're trying to get on the news. Because there is a lot of news going on all of the time, right? 24-hour cable networks, we have shows all morning, 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7, 11 at night. Gosh, there's just so many newscasts, so many stories going on, new information, while there is just as many people trying to get in the news or get their stories on the news. And so my one piece of advice would really be, as a reporter sifting through emails and looking for stories every day, is that you have to stick out, which I already just said. But this is how you stick out. And I guess something interesting. It just has to be interesting. No matter what you're pitching, really think would you click on it? I think that's the best gauge whatsoever. Think about the general public and why would they care? We as reporters have the typical things we're going to cover every single day, and that's going to be crime, events of the day. But we also are always looking for other things that have not been published in the news. And if you're trying to get on the news, what I would suggest, if you're sending an email or a text, the first line needs to be just like a subject line. You're not going to click on it or open that email unless it's interesting. And so, first of all, having name recognition and prior contact to the reporter is very important. So start working on that if you haven't already. The next one is the subject line needs to be who does what. And you can try to think of it like this. Go to other news sources on the internet or newspapers, whatever it may be, and read their headlines. A lot of the time, we're taught to make that headline very simple as you can. I mean, it's hard sometimes because it's a complicated subject, but you want to read that headline. It usually is who does what. Drunk driver kills man. Drunk driver hits man, takes off. Like, that's exactly the formula we use for a headline. And so if you know reporter speak, you're using reporter speak, give them a headline. It kind of makes things easier, and the reporter's gonna be like, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about without really thinking about it. It just makes it easier for them. Another thing you want to include, if you finally get their attention, if they open that email, if they open your text, if you're calling a reporter, the things you want to include in this pitch is who this story impacts. Because like I've said before, reporters don't care about you as a person, unless it's some sort of crazy story where the mayor did something to you and you're suing them or whatever it may be. They're not going to really do a story about you just because. And so if you have a story, if you have a great case you're working on or inside information, that's your time to kind of launch, think about how this can be a news story and how it impacts the public. For instance, we have an attorney in Florida working on a case that has to do with pool pumps, and they've actually been exploding and hurting people. Now, they may only be representing a few people that this happened to, but the potential for that case and for that story is anybody who has that brand of pool pump, that could hurt. So that ends up being a lot of people, right? So you want to tell people, who is this going to impact? The broader the audience, usually the better the story, because more viewers, more clicks, more money for the news station. Who can they talk to? One thing we're always asked as reporters is, who can you talk to? Who are you going to surround this story through? Who are you going to tell it through their emotion? And so that's usually the victim, the person it impacts. If you can connect a reporter with a person it's impacting or surrounding, you are golden. You are making the job so easy for the reporter. The last thing is, of course you want to give this story, but make sure the reporter wants you at least, to show up in it a little bit. They're never going to do it completely surrounding you, but if you can add any sort of unique advice or insight to this story, so they have to, and they have no choice to put you in, that is a really good way to also make sure you're included in the story, get your face out there, your name, and of course that wonderful link in the web script. The last thing I wanted to mention is this idea for this came from because this weekend my husband is also in news. He's a producer in Orlando, and he had such a wild weekend. You also need to be aware of like what is going on in your community. For instance, they had a double shooting. They had a 7-year-old drown. They had so much news, and they only had one reporter and one photographer all day. And so those are days that you're probably going to get looked over. Even if it's a day you have to send some information in, your chances aren't going to be very good. And so the information I just gave you, the good, interesting headline, the who it impacts, who they can talk to, those are always great things. And to, send those to reporters, not too in advance, but pretty close to the deadline is really important because they have so much going on. But if you have any questions about how to be noticed, how to stick out, how to connect with reporters, please reach out because we can answer those questions.